Asselmoilanen, ongelmatonta organisaatiopsykologiaa. Podcastin tarjoilee henkilöarvioinnin erikoisyritys Asselmointi Oy.
My friend wears a flamboyant hat. Can I be sure he's a narcissist? What other telltale signs are associated with narcissism? That's a difficult word. Let's try out one more time. Why are we so interested in narcissists? Anyhow, not everyone is narcissist, but everyone seems to be dealing with narcissists. Get your facts right with Espen Skorstad, the leading narcissist expert in the Nordics. I have to learn saying narcissist expert. Also with me, Juho, who is possibly not a narcissist and for sure no expert on narcissism. So welcome to another episode of Asselmoilanen with Espen from Norway and Juho from Lempäälä. Welcome, Espen. Happy to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And now we're talking English rather than Finnish or Norwegian, so everybody understands each other. How you doing, Juho?
Hi. Cheerio.
Cheerio. All good. Cool. What do you know about narcissists, Espen, and why are you interested in narcissists?
I would say I know quite a bit. Thing is that I'm writing a book about the topic.
Okay.
Which will be published at least in the local market in August.
Okay.
As a psychologist, I've been dealing with narcissism on different arenas. I think my first contact point with this personality, if you like, was maybe almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
Because I was setting up a company those days and we had no income. And during that period, a fellow colleague, she was also a clinical psychologist, she was starting doing casting for reality TV.
Okay.
So you guys would know like Robinson and all those programs. And I was working with casting for reality TV for maybe 2 years. And I didn't know much about narcissism at the moment, but I discovered that there were some similarities amongst some of the people who wanted to attend the programs.
Okay, so you were selecting the people for the show?
I was selecting the people for the show, yes. I was. And I think that there is some sort of misunderstanding of what casting is actually all about, because some people tend to believe that we are consciously looking for the troublemakers, the people who will make drama on television. But the psychologist's role is rather the contrary. It's about selecting people out rather than selecting people in.
Okay.
And I think that the listeners here, it's hard to imagine all the strange people who are not chosen for those programs. So really selecting quite a bit of people out. And in any case, there were quite a lot of narcissists in that population that wanted to attend, Paradise Island or whatever do you have out there.
How could you tell? Like, did you have like a narcissist radar ready?
Well, I think that my experience from reality TV and also my work in designing personality questionnaires had made me become more conscious about what this is all about. And I think there are some key features. I think you mentioned wearing a hat.
Flamboyant hat.
Flamboyant hat. And I think that's actually quite spot on, because sometimes you can actually observe it on a distance in terms of vanity. And it's not only about, having nice clothes. It's sometimes about stretching it slightly too far, so that people think, oh, that's nice, but also, like for instance, wearing an old school hat. There are a certain group of people who wear old school hats. Like, I don't know how it is where you live, but you can also, at least here in Oslo, sometimes you can see somewhere during summer, grown-up adults, typically men, 40, 50, 60 years old, who don't have any clothes on their upper part of the body. They like to show off. Even in the city center, they can walk around like that.
Telltale sign of a narcissist.
And this is about creating attention. And that is really important. That's an important component of narcissism. So not only the vanity, but also the aspect of creating attention. Because in the narcissistic psychology, there is a need for excessive admiration from others.
Yeah.
And they would do whatever it takes to get admiration. So that means they would brag about things. Yeah. They might brag about people they know in school, and they would sometimes try to brag about things that provide social status. So that could be material goods. It could be knowing important people. It could be having, a big house, or it could even be things that their kids have done. So my boy ran, 1,000 meters in that speed and all that, those kind of things. So it's bragging is an important component.
Juha likes to tell us how much he plays golf.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that you might have.
And how good my kids are at sports.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's my favorite topic. Yeah.
So Juha, what's your touching point on narcissists?
Yeah, I've been reading a lot about narcissists, and one of my former girlfriends blamed me for being a narcissist, for leaving her.
Oh, for leaving her.
Yeah,
okay.
Or in the aftermath of everything. Yeah, that was the end result. So I've reflected on the topic, and I've been wondering whether I am an narcissist. And for me, what has been helpful and also somewhat therapeutic has been just to understand that many people, not everyone, but many people have some narcissistic tendencies. And it doesn't mean that you're like clinically not fit for the world or somehow permanently bad, but you can have kind of this subclinical narcissist tendencies that might surface at some occasions, but then you might be able to somehow play it down a little bit also. So have some control over it and not be kind of not maybe a full-scale personality disorder.
Well done.
Well, that's actually what I tell myself, just to feel good about myself. Yeah. So I've been reflecting mainly on a personal level.
Okay.
And I think also in the world of psychometric, there are some good tools that try to grasp this maybe more subclinical aspect of narcissism, the dark trial type of triad, not trial, type of approach to measuring this kind of normally varying amounts of narcissism. So that for me, as an assessment psychologist, that's how I try to approach it.
Espen, are narcissists dangerous?
They could be.
Okay.
So, like you were saying, there you could have this to the light degree, and you can have it to a pretty serious degree. And I think that's an important thing to understand, that these are we're not necessarily talking about demons here. It doesn't have to be like serial killers or anything like that. Yep. I think we all have more or less narcissism within us.
Yep.
Some has a little, some has more, some have some features of it, some have other things. And I think that's an important aspect. And when we talk about like assessment, which Juha mentioned, I think it's quite important to try to identify that tipping point when it goes from being, constructive to really destructive. But there is a sort of narcissism which is called malignant narcissism.
Okay.
Which is quite dangerous, actually. Okay. So that is the kind of narcissism that you would observe my assumption would be that the guy who most likely killed Olof Palme, the Swedish prime minister.
And we don't know who killed him.
Okay, no, but there is... Well, the police thinks they know it.
Yeah. So maybe in this podcast we'll
reveal it finally.
We'll reveal who killed Olof Palme, so stay tuned.
We should use that in the marketing of the episode.
It actually will be used.
And if you remember, if we move from Sweden, we could go to Denmark.
No, stay in Sweden, Olof Palme.
All right. No, but the guy called, in Sweden, they call it Skandiamannen, whom they most likely think Palme. He was definitely a vulnerable narcissist. And that's a sort of narcissism which is characterized by ideas of grandiosity, you know, thinking that you're better than most. It's a lot of bitterness in that vulnerable narcissism. There's a lot of thoughts about revenge. There's more aggression into it. And it could also turn into what we define as narcissistic rage. And that kind of rage combined with some sort of rejection can, in some cases, lead to violence. And I think that was a very clear example of that. And also, if you move to some other neighboring countries like Denmark, you would have the example of in Denmark, I think he's called Ubåt Madsen.
Okay.
And the guy who had this submarine and brought this journalist Kim Wall into sub and killed her.
Horrible.
And if you read that story, you can also find some very clear examples of a narcissistic mind. And then we're talking about malignant narcissism, which is very, very rare.
Okay.
But it's definitely linked to aggression and narcissism.
Okay, and it seems to be quite easily spottable. Like you can easily sort of find examples of people that might have that disorder.
I think that's a leading question. I would say yes and no. I think going back to what you said about, you know, his relationship, and if you think about, I think, you know, there are probably some listeners out there who would have some experience with narcissists, either in a relationship or within a family or at work. And I think a bit of the challenge here, it's a bit hard to identify actually. So people might live with someone for 10 or 20 years and then they realize, oh my God.
Okay.
And, you know, they realize that this is a bit more serious than what I thought I went into. And that's an interesting thing about narcissism because it's a personality type that tend to create a good first impression. And that's why we also have a model in narcissism, which we call the chocolate cake model. And that's about, you know, imagine having a chocolate cake and you have the first bite or the first piece and you love it. And then you have a second piece of cake and it's still okay. But, you know, if you eat the entire cake, you might become sick and you really, you know, and this is a bit how narcissism works in relationships as well. At the first impression, it's quite good, but over time, it becomes a problem.
Yeah, very relatable. Like eating chocolate cakes for dinner isn't a good idea, but they might be a good dessert.
H-Asselmoilainen podcastin mahdollistaa Asselmointi Oy. Asselmointi on 2020-luvun henkilöarviointiyritys. Ainoa asia, mitä teemme, ovat arvioinnit. Ne teemme kunnolla, mutta kivasti ja elämänmyönteisesti, ilman pönötystä.
Asselmoinnilla on 4 arvoa. Vahvuuspohjaisuus, olemme hysteerisen kiinnostuneita ehdokkaiden vahvuuksista. Kantaottavuus, suosittelemme ehdokkaita asteikolla, suositellaan tehtävään tai ei suositella tehtävään. Selkeää ja näppärää. Nopeus, teemme arvioinnit asiakkaan ja ehdokkaan aikataulujen mukaan. Keskimäärin arviointiin valmis 3 vuorokaudessa tilauksesta. Viimeisenä elämänmyönteisyys. Tällaista rentoa meidän kanssa hommailu on, niin kuin täällä radiossakin kuulet.
Kaikki tiedot, hinnat, palvelut ja tilauslomakkeet löydät nettisivuiltamme asselmointi.fi. Mene sinne, emme tuhlaa aikaasi.
I have 2 professors. 2 of my favorite psychology professors out of 3 are researching narcissism and psychopaths. The other one is Essi Wieding, regards to Essi at University College London, who works with narcissists and narcissistic children. And there seems to be some genetical inheritance linked with being a narcissist. And Essi also told me a lovely story about one of her students who collected the teeth of the child and sort of when she turned 18, gave a necklace of all these teeth the milk teeth that had fallen out of your mouth as a present of your 18th birthday. So
what a good present.
Wonderful present idea for any parent there sort of collecting their children's teeth. Just make a necklace. Don't know, is that part of being a narcissist? That sounds really weird. But about you, Juho, for example, I'm sure your children would love such a necklace. Have you collected your children's teeth, or are you planning to?
No. I'm not planning to, and it's a good point discussing this. Maybe we need to leave this room. Let's see how Espen manages to negotiate our availability. Yeah, I think that's a common comment about narcissists is that often it's extended to their children, that they might be overly obsessed with the children and their reputation and all of that. So, yeah, but I haven't collected any
teeth.
Yeah.
But what about you, Espen? Is narcissist tendencies, are they inherited?
Yes,
okay.
It's a very strong inheritable factor.
Okay.
And I think there is, I think within psychology in general, I think genetics are a bit underrated.
Okay.
My personal opinion is that, the moment we start talking about biology and genetics, it sort of feels like it's something out of our control. It's not within our the psychologist's control. So some of us tend to dislike it a bit.
Yeah.
And also because it makes it, it's more difficult to do something about it. You can't. Yeah, it's. I wouldn't say deterministic, but it's definitely a difficult topic for some. And I think if you look into the history of treating narcissism in terms of psychotherapy, I think the genetic part has been, that has been put into a closet, and we like to speak more about relationships and early childhood experiences, and typically how we were treated by our moms or dads, and it's despite the fact that Freud had a lot of good thoughts, he was also missing the point to some extent there, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with our social democratic sort of ideas that people have these genetics that determine what they will be and how they will behave.
It's against the thought of equality also. But is it possible to heal? Because if I remember correctly, what I've been told about narcissism is that it's people usually don't feel necessarily that there's anything wrong with them. And as such, the kind of preconditions for becoming less narcissistic are necessarily not that good. So is it possible to get better, become less narcissist, or is it kind of dependent on the kind of clinical overall assessment of what the opportunities are?
Is it a trade or a state?
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that there are no evidence-based approach to therapy in terms of narcissism. There are a lot of approaches, and I think that things could be done definitely. But I think it's fair to say that there are no consensus about that. Approach A or B is better for this. Unfortunately, what some clinicians report, however, is that the narcissistic individual thinks that therapy is quite okay. Because he or she can speak about
themselves,
him or herself, and be listened to, which they like because it creates attention.
Yeah.
But also, as you say, it's not necessarily if we talk about serious and pathological narcissism, it's not necessarily perceived as a problem by the individual, but more for the surroundings. So, like colleagues, wives, husbands, children, etc. Those perceive it as a challenge. So, I think that's what differentiates narcissism from other kinds of psychopathology. You don't have any individual suffering in the individual itself. It's the people around who suffers.
Yeah.
Wow. So the narcissist doesn't suffer. The people around them suffer. It's like stupidity, isn't it? It's not you who suffers, but it's the people who suffer from your stupidity.
Yeah, and I would assume that you would need a much more skilled and experienced clinician to work with a narcissist in therapy compared to doing like manualized therapies for anxiety or these kind of things. So you would need a more skilled, experienced professional working with treating narcissism if you would ever try that.
Absolutely. But hey, what would be a way for those listeners who have somebody who might be a narcissist close to them? So what should they do and how can they save themselves, or how can they, like we agreed that you can't change the narcissist because he or she doesn't think that there's anything wrong with them. But how do you behave around a narcissist so you can maintain your sanity?
I think that's a difficult and complex question. I think if you read a lot of the books out there and if you read the newspapers, I think there's always one advice that seems to, be repeated all over, and that is basically to run away. And I don't like that sort of piece of advice, because what we just discussed is that you can have a little bit of narcissism,
Yep.
and you can have a lot of it. And if we go back to our conversation, I think there is a big difference of having a husband wearing a flamboyant hat and being married to this Danish guy who brought, the journalists into the submarine. So I think what I'm trying
Martin thinks it's the same thing.
what I'm trying to say is that you have to try to figure out whether, it's a dark version of narcissism or if it's a light version.
Yeah.
And if the individual is just a bit, if we're just talking about some admiration seeking and some vanity, it doesn't have to be much of a problem. But if it's, complete lack of empathy and psychopathic traits, then it's more of a challenge.
Yeah, so very difficult. So the only advice is just to avoid those people who are very narcissistic.
Teacher, I have a question as well.
Okay, go ahead.
My lack of knowledge is endless. So I've been wondering, because the stereotype of a narcissist, at least for me, is a male person. So is there like a gender distribution in this? How frequent it is?
In terms of, I think roughly we can say that 2/3 of these individuals are males.
Yeah, okay.
2/3.
But there are some research that's challenging that a bit as well.
So female narcissism could be more kind of hidden.
Yeah, no, but if we take a tabloid approach to it, we could say that there is actually a diagnosis for female narcissism, and we call that histrionic.
Yeah.
So that is also the attention-seeking, and there is a lot of the same features, but the histrionic is more exhibitionistic and more dramatic.
Yeah.
So some would say that there are. I think we could relate gender bias to this, and there are also studies who sort of, imagine if you have an anonymous description of some clinical features.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, let me try to do this over again. If you have a description of some narcissistic features, and you add that to a male versus a female, and you give that description to a therapist, the therapist would be more likely to put the diagnosis of narcissist if it's a male than if it's a female who has the exactly same features, but where the identity is anonymous.
Yeah.
So that might indicate that there might be some gender biases also amongst the clinicians in this aspect.
Okay, that's understandable. Espen, what do you think? Is there different professions that have more narcissists within them? Because you said like the actors are the weird bunch, and we see these people who are selected and they're pretty weird. So who are the weird people who selected out? And I'm thinking like sports organization bosses, like the people who take the envelopes full of money and then sort of want to be in FIFA's headquarters and forcefully kiss players in the field after the match of the football game. That could be a group, but is there sort of other professions that have more narcissists within them? So what would they be?
That would be actors, stand-up comedians, reality TV participants, consultants, managers, musicians.
anywhere where you can get a lot of attention. So that's like a telltale sign. If somebody wants to be in the limelight, that might sort of tell.
Exactly. And you can also see that's quite interesting to see if you have someone, you mentioned sport organizations. So imagine you have like a young athlete who gets a lot of attention at young age. You know, let's, take a look at Zlatan, for instance. He has a few narcissistic traits. And if you follow Zlatan over his lifespan, you would see that there probably was a bit of narcissism before he started playing football. And I would assume, that would be my guess at least, that his narcissism increased by, the amount of fame, etc. But then it's very interesting to see when a narcissistic individual sort of steps out of the limelight. So, what happens when you stop playing football, for instance? Then what you do, and what we often observe is that the person would try to find another area where you can get attention. So now Zlatan wants to become an actor. Right? So that is typically a typical pattern you can see.
I suppose that's a place to be, but you have to sort of have some sporting skills to be an elite athlete. So that sort of limits the amount of narcissists in that group. How many people are narcissists? Like, is it 1 in 10, 1 in 1?
Oh, it depends on the...
What are the odds?
What are the odds?
It depends on how serious kind of narcissism we're talking about, because I think it's really important to distinguish what we call trait narcissism, which is something we all have more or less of, and the clinical version of narcissism. So then we're sort of talking about the personality disorder. So let's talk about the personality disorder. The interesting thing is that the figures are very varied from study to study, from country to country. For sure, it's more of it in the US than in Finland. I've seen studies from the US which says that up to 6% of the population have narcissistic personality disorder. I doubt that figure is that high. If you look at Norwegian studies, you would see that the figures are around 1%. And I don't think that's not explainable due to cultural differences. We know that there are cultural differences in this area, but I would say that most likely you would have something between 0.5 and 2% in terms of the disorder. That would be my rough estimate.
I suppose some cultures kind of feed upon being a narcissist. Like you said, the American culture is very individualistic and so they value people who are very visible. So it kind of feeds that behavior of being a narcissist. Whereas in the sort of Nordic culture, you push down if you try to become something flamboyant.
In Norway, we have something which we call janteloven. Are you familiar with that?
Janteloven?
Yes. No. It's a sort of it refers to what you just said. Actually, it's like you're not supposed to brag about things. So if you perform well, you have to tone it a bit down. And if you behave differently, that will be publicly sanctioned. So that is very different from what you could see in places like California. So if you go to the northern part of Norway or the Norwegian countryside, it's this is a kind of behavior that will be sanctioned quite quickly.
Absolutely. The Australians call it like the tall poppy syndrome, that if you try to climb above the others, somebody will come and kick you in the balls.
But we have to, this tells us that narcissism is sort of contextual as well. So if you think of, if you are, let's say that you're standing in a line to a nightclub in Helsinki. If you're Madonna, you would expect her, not only because she has a narcissistic personality, but you would see that she would pass the line. She would just skip the line and go straight in.
And I would let her.
And you would let her, right? But if you did the same, people would react. Who's this guy? Why is he doing it? So what works for a Madonna does not work for a Matti.
Oh, dang.
And that's
Madonna.
That's telling us something about the contextual aspects of narcissism, not only in terms of geography, but also who you are as an individual and how famous you are.
Absolutely. Madonna, very flamboyant hats as well. Anything, Juho, you want to ask or
I have
add?
one more thing before we start to wrap this up. There's a lot of talk about diversity and inclusion nowadays, and obviously in recruitment assessment context, always the question is how can we kind of weed out the narcissists so we don't end up working with them. But as a society, we've learned that we need everyone's kind of effort. So is there a place for narcissists? Is there a place where we can put them so they can at least somehow be useful
Reality
for the rest?
TV.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it.
Did you forget to listen?
Yeah, I
Reality
was
TV.
listening, but I was wondering whether that was also the answer. Is that's the place, the daycare for narcissists?
Paradise Island.
Paradise Island.
And take the boat home.
No, I think if I should, one of the projects in my own book about narcissism is to sort of avoid the demonizing aspect of it, that we need to distinguish about the light narcissism and the darker versions. And there are definitely arenas where you could work well as a narcissist. I think, if you take something such as leadership, there is quite a bit of research indicating that you actually need a little bit of it. As long as it's not too much. So a little bit of narcissism could be helpful. I discussed it with one of the leading experts in personality disorders here in Norway, and he said, if you have no narcissism whatsoever, you will not get out of bed in the morning. So you need some drive and ambition, and that's also a key part of narcissism. And we need those for managers, or for the group we just discussed, actors, comedians, etc. We need those people as well. So I think as long as they don't mess it up for other people, it should be fine.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, today I've learned that there's a small narcissist in each of us. That's good news. And also learned who killed Olof Palme. Thank you for that, solving the problem. We'll send an email to the Swedish police to go and get the Skandia man. And then also I learned that there's a new book coming out in August as well, and we'll be looking forward to the book. I don't know, Juho might translate it later into Finnish, and then you can enjoy it in Finnish as well. Hey, thank you, Espen Skorstad, for joining us. Espen is a wonderful guy. If you're ever in Norway, get in touch, sort of see Espen, and thank you, Juho.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great talk.
We can do this again and talk about some other exciting stuff later on. Thank you, Espen.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.